I was originally, in the early 90s, I got interested in Detroit techno, and then I got interested in UK drum and bass and dub and all of this stuff. By the early part of this decade, I just stopped doing beats altogether. And that was originally my sort of angle into making electronic music, having been a drummer to begin with. I guess what was happening, I was losing my affection for digital audio, and doing the thing with the mods was kind of to me it seemed like a punk gesture against the
technology.
Growing fidelity and all of that, and the what had been the digital fringe becoming a kind of entrenched mainstream in audio sensibility. It's like I remember first time hearing certain forms of digital music, and realizing that people's listening had completely been transformed by it. I mean, the sounds that like a kind of aesthetic realizations that eventually resulted in microsound. That kind of glitch in microsound were initially bad artifacts of digital audio, and I started missing analog sound, really, and I started I just lost any I gave up in having any belief in sampled, banked, buffered audio as my toolkit, and I wanted any other kind of audio, and it didn't really matter to me what it was. I mean, I didn't want to go out and I didn't want to start playing drums again, or I didn't want to have to learn how to play the violin or something, But so that's a period where I got some test oscillators and just started working with tone again. Live use of machines. That was the thing that I thought needed to be developed the most in the scene in New York, because it was taking off in Europe and it was really lagging way behind in New York. New York had a kind of great DJ culture and a great band culture, and this kind of huge gap in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm in Dumbo. I'm kind of living in what used to be my friend's painting studio in Dumbo, and I have roommates of all different sorts that come and go, and one roommate left an old Belgian-made RGB video monitor there. It was a well-made monitor, but it was really old. It was from the early 70s or something. It had separate inputs for the 3 color channels, so that's RGB stands for. And I was sitting around there one cold winter, kind of, distracted and not knowing exactly what to do. And they had moved out and they had left the monitor. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? And there are my 2 oscillators sitting on the table, and then there's the monitor there. And really, I'm like this. And the only thing you need to do to make an image with sound is plug an oscillator into one of those channels. And in that era of analog video, that's how it worked. So I plugged in an oscillator and I made a 60 hertz tone, and then it made a big fat red bar sitting right in the middle of the screen, and then I realized, oh, this was the basis of the old video synthesizers. Also figuring into all this is at some point in the early part of this decade, I read John Geiger's book about Brian Geisen called The Chapel of Extreme Experience, which functioned it recuperated a whole lost area of my interest with the study of flicker and the flicker phenomena. The flickering and symmetry are a part of, seem to be a part of all sacred traditions, which Jane's kind of talked about that in the bicameral book. But it's certainly, it becomes obvious in the Dream Machine flicker phenomena stuff. The drawings that are made could be the product of any culture, and they are the same sort of geometric forms and the same sort of pretty much symmetrical arrays of geometry that suggests a center point, and the center point is really that center point becomes the location of consciousness in a way, you know, as it relates to the sacred traditions, like the European alchemy and Tibetan Buddhism. At the same time, from a picture-making point of view, I mean, I realize that there are some limitations in the you know, modern, postmodern, and post-postmodern art setting that a lot of people have you know, have seen a lot of symmetry, and they're tired of it. So the art world context, that there's a, you know, I'm aware that that's a dangerous area. That it gives you the compositional situation of a horizon and a vanishing point, no matter what the subject is, and that starts to germinate as like a nearly a real metaphysical issue. You know, where's the object? Is it there? Is it here? And you know, I mean, it's so everywhere prevalent that it seems hard to even draw a distinction with it. But it's also something that's emotionally really satisfying to me and medicinal to me. I've been looking at flickering for a long time, and then plus, you know, television. I mean, that's Richard and Garrett and I were just talking about that in the ride back from Philadelphia. That is like, well, you know, I said, well, Richard, I was addicted to television when I was a kid. He said, oh, I was too. And I said, well, that's, even though there's, you know, almost 20 years of difference in our age, you know, it's like, well, that's why we're doing what we're doing. You understand that. It's like the flicker of television, it really is, it's a neurological addiction that has really almost nothing to do necessarily with what the content of the material coming over the television is, you know. And so it's a kind of, that's one of my later day theories about it, or ideas about it. It's like I feel like I'm doing positive medicine with the mechanism of television and closed circuit video and flicker phenomena to sort of compensate for so many years of bad medicine that got into my system that way. When I started to collect objects to do that with, I mean, I just took the first thing, you know, I described to you how I had set up this closed circuit system, and then realized that, well, it's nice to have a figure in the ground, you know. It's just kind of nice. I mean, some people didn't like it. Some people thought I was being, you know, representational. It's like, oh God, I can't even believe anybody thinks in those terms anymore. Like whether that matters, whether something's representational. But evidently, some people still do, depending on what years you went to school and stuff like that. But I started to pick objects. I realized pretty quickly that some objects look better on video than they do in life. And that became the kind of, and then the objects had to be of a certain size. They had to have a certain handle ability. And very quickly it turned to things that were transparent and shiny gave me much more possibility. And so I realized that I started spending more and more time in 99-cent stores and in the Salvation Army, and in any time I traveled in flea markets and stuff like that. But I at that point, I wasn't. I couldn't tell you what kind of objects I was looking for or why I was looking for them. But I came to realize pretty quickly that there was some system at work in the objects that were available for this kind of consideration. And a lot of these objects I noticed were, you know, dime store, or the modern day equivalent, 99-cent store, mass-produced objects that were being made available for nothing because they had kind of failed in any kind of real marketplace. And a lot of them seem to fall in this area of being a very modest or pathetic form of objects that had a kind of a transcendentalness to them, you know, like they were either decorations, or they were candle holders, or they were had some borderline religiosity to them. And that's how I got kind of sucked in that channel. So all these years later, and I was very much into the idea of these things being detritus in this kind of, to me it's a failed economic system of failure of the 99-cent stores, and how 99-cent stores are spread everywhere, and they really just represent the collapse of the middle class to me. You know, it's like a place where you can go to buy stuff that nobody wants, that nobody needs, but you can go take your babies there and buy them something shiny and stuff them back in the car for, you know, and get away for $10 or something, you know. They're very sad places. They're very pathetic, and the objects have that about them, you know. But then also it's like any object that you look at in light, after a while becomes a transcendent object, you know? I'm not a sound artist.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't claim to be a sound artist.
How do you...
I'm a musician who now does simultaneous enactments in picture, kinetic picture and sound making. I'm not a sound artist by the 90s definition of it at all. I tried for a while to think of myself that way, but I don't. And I come from a music background, I come from a film background, and I'm trying to work with those, you know, the remnants of both of those sensibilities in a present phenomenological way. I don't have much personal use for theories about sound art. They don't inform my practice at all. I mean, if anything, I've kind of reacted against most of that. That's why I'd rather just listen to the sound of a video signal buzzing. It's more like how you make things speak, I think. And I think I'm probably in some ways I'm a more conservative musician when it comes down to it. In some ways I'm conservative, in some ways I'm completely not. But I don't worry about correcting myself anymore. I'm too old to worry about correcting myself. I just have to do the most and the best that I can do as often as I can do it. That's my only defense, really. But yeah, thank you for asking. I'm not trying to prove anything about sound art at all. Oh, the bicameral research sound projection system. Oh, boy.
Say it again, but a little slower.
Yeah, no one remembers it. I'm the only one that ever says it.
Well, then
it's
say
too
it
much
again
for people.
and say it slowly.
Bicameral research sound and projection system. Thank you. I've tried to shorten it, even as recently as yesterday. I said, well, could I cut something out? It just doesn't work, you know.